Jenny Cote is a writer that you guys know if you attend this church, that you heard from Lisa and I that we came across her devotional book, Now I See, and was completely captivated by her ability to communicate. And the funny thing is, that's not her background. Her background is not authoring books. Her background, if I remember right, if I was listening at dinner, is marketing. That's her background. But she had a passion to write, and it turns out that that's exactly what God would have her to do. She's involved in very, very, very many projects. She has, because of her skill at authorship, she has been representing that craft that God has given her in France and in Italy, throughout the United States. I'm very jealous and envious of her. She gets to speak, travel to 3-4 times a year, Williamsburg, Virginia. Have any of you been to Williamsburg? Colonial Williamsburg is, in my opinion, it is the adult Hollywood, or the adult, I should say, Disneyland. Kids go to Disneyland to play, and adults would go to Williamsburg to walk back into time and see the reenactments and to live out American history. It is absolutely awesome. She goes there often, and she's very, very involved with many others in seeing to it that good, dependable, accurate American history is known and that it is maintained. And let's be honest, everybody, we're losing that battle in our public school setting, and some private settings are not even being true to the American story. But that's where her expertise is, but she's very, very gifted in many areas of her writing skills. What else? She's appeared on various programs, and she has authored and written articles for many others as well. But I think she caused Lisa and I to remember a sad day. This is a good story, but she caused us to remember a sad day. So Lisa and I, growing up, we not knowing each other growing up, but being Southern California kids, we were never far from the ocean. And I was born in San Diego, but we were never far from the ocean. And then we moved one day. It was a Saturday. We packed up and we moved to a place called Chino Hills. Well, it wasn't even called Chino Hills at the time. It didn't have a name. It was just the county. And we woke up the next morning, and for the first time in our lives, we couldn't smell salty air. We didn't realize that all of our lives you could smell the sea. And we woke up here, and if anything, you could smell cows. And I asked someone, what does that stink? And the guy said, that's the smell of money. We're a bunch of dairymen. Well, I'm not a dairyman, but I love the sea. So when we read her book, Now I See, and she's got many others out there tonight, but I'm telling you, Lisa and I looked at each other and we remembered, oh man, we forgot what it was like. Well, she's a woman of the sea. She's a woman of the Word of God. And she's made herself available to us tonight for our culture detox. And so I'm going to ask you, if you would, to put your eyes to the screen right now, if you would.
Well, the nationwide debate over the removal of Confederate monuments continues. Duke University removing a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee just yesterday. But in an op-ed, our next guest argues we should be learning from these statues, writing, quote, what's happening in the country right now actually offers a perfect opportunity to teach children about our past. The response to Charlottesville should not be to remove our national monuments, but to point to them and teach the history behind them. Why are we so afraid to do that? Joining us now, the author of that op-ed and the new book, The Voice, The Revolution, and the Key, Jenny Cote. Jenny, it's good to have you here. Thanks very much for being here.
Oh, John, thanks for having me.
You say it's a mistake to tear down those Confederate statues.
Right. Any statue.
Any statue.
Right.
Why?
Well, you've heard the phrase, Those who don't remember their history are doomed to repeat it. Well, gee, how do you remember history? By the things that point to it, that teach us, our books, our monuments, our museums. And how are kids not going to learn to repeat history if we don't have these reminders there?
And what is the lesson to children when they see, decades-old statues, hundreds-of-year-old statues in some cases, being yanked down?
Well, I think children are confused, but this is a teaching moment to say, you know what, there's good, bad, and ugly in our history. There's a lot of pain in our history, but we learn the most from painful things, don't we? Not to repeat them again. And so I think our children need us to walk them through, because they're looking at us and they're watching what we're doing. So let's do it as a teaching moment to teach the history and not erase it.
How do we teach kids about these kinds of historical issues?
Well, the way I do it, and my life's calling is to make history fun for kids and make it come alive. And I do that through my books, and I have talking animals that go through time, and I have a new novel out about Patrick Henry and the Revolutionary War. And the way I decided to do it was, before they were founding fathers, they were founding children. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if children get to see our founders, Patrick Henry's 7 years old, and watch him rise to his calling in life to serve our country and see, what, they failed, they had obstacles, but they could rise above that too to serve their nation. And so it kind of takes them down from being superheroes, that they were regular people, good, bad, and ugly, just like we are.
And we were blessed in this country with an incredible array of talent and dedication in those founding fathers.
That's right.
And and now people are saying, yeah, let's tear down those statues.
No, that's the worst mistake we could make for our children.
The book is The Voice, the Revolution, and the Key.
Right.
Jenny Cote. Jenny, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jenny Cote. There you are. God bless you.
Pastor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Wait, did I sleep through the rapture or something? Because, man, this feels like heaven to me. Is Jesus out there somewhere? I feel him in this place. So, no, y'all, thank you so much for having me. And someone said, you're not from around here, are you? You say y'all a lot. I was like, I'm going to have everybody saying y'all by the time we're done. So I'm from Atlanta, so thank you for bearing with my southern accent. So I am so honored to be here to talk about this specifically, because as I was sharing with Pastor Jack earlier, I had to do some culture detox myself in order to ever get here on this stage. And I'm a storyteller, so you're going to have to wait for the story to unfold. But let's talk about our regimen. You've heard these detoxes. They always give you a regimen, right? I just did a pineapple detox. So it says the stuff you got to take out of your diet and the good stuff to put in. So let's talk about what we're going to do tonight for a culture detox regimen. I'm going to talk about the value and purpose of story. So many times we just blaze by life and we don't think about it. So we're going to camp out and think about some simple things, but that make a big impact on us. Let's talk about his story versus their story. We're going to look at the value and purpose of his story and your story. Reclaiming American history. What's going to happen if we lose our past? How to make history live in order to inspire the next generation. To just fall in love with our country again. Is that so difficult? We live in the greatest place on earth. Is that so difficult? And then I'm going to allow God to show off. I love it when he shows off. Don't you love it when he just shows off? And he just does these crazy, amazing things. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. And you're going to hear some incredible outcomes of the power of story and what that looked like. So, what do these three things have in common? In the beginning, once upon a time, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The beginning of stories, right? Do you like stories? Everybody in here like stories? Yeah. What do they do for us? Well, I love John Eldredge wrote this book called Epic. It's this teeny-weeny little book called Epic. But he says this: every good story has the same ingredients: love, adventure, danger, heroism, romance, sacrifice, the battle of good and evil, unlikely heroes, insurmountable odds, and a little fellowship that in hope beyond hope pulls through in the end. It's true of every fairy tale, every myth, every western, every epic, just about every story you can think of one way or another. It's true of every fairy tale like Star Wars, or every movie, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Titanic, Braveheart. Have you ever wondered why? Because every story we tell borrows its story from a larger story. A story woven into the fabric of our being, reality, and it echoes in our lives into these ways. A secret in our hearts, a great battle to fight and someone to fight for us. An adventure, something that requires everything we have, something to be shared with those we love and need. We need stories. They help us figure out life. So what was Jesus' primary teaching tool? Parables, right? And what are parables? They're simple stories, right? The Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, the lost coin. Okay, now, and Pastor Jack, I've heard you more than once say, I can't stand it when they say Bible stories, it's Bible facts. And yes, it is. So just work with us here tonight. So we're going to, because we're going to camp out on stories. So essentially, Jesus used stories to communicate truth, right? And his Great Commission, and I always like to say, it's not the Great Suggestion, it's the Great Commission, is to share the gospel. That means tell his story as we go about our lives. Look, I'm a professional storyteller. I do this for a living. Every one of us in here, as a child of God, we're supposed to be storytellers. And we got a main story to tell, right? Yeah, right. Okay, so why do you think it's called history? Guess who first penned the words in the beginning? God, right? Genesis 1:1. Because we're living in his story. That's why it's called history. But the culture around us is living in it too. And guess what? They don't have a clue. They're oblivious that they are living in his story. They're characters in his story. And they don't even realize it. Our culture wants to erase his story and replace it with their story. Have you noticed that? Our culture doesn't want you to have anything to do with his story. They not only want to tell you how to act, where to go, how to act on the way to get there. And they want you to be this faceless character. They don't care that you have an important role as long as you fall in line and do what they say and write their story. Does the culture make you weary sometimes? All of us, right? I don't care how solid we are in our faith, you know. Look at the Bible characters and how weary they got, how depressed they got sometimes. And this is exactly where I was about 4 years ago. Y'all remember this little thing called COVID that happened? And weren't you just exhausted from it all? But that wasn't bothering me as much as what I saw happening to my country. And I was grieving over America. Y'all, I bleed red, white, and blue, okay? I am like, in fact, my ancestor, Samuel Crowley, was the first patriot to die in what many consider the first battle of the Revolution, which is the Battle of Point Pleasant, which was 6 months before Lexington and Concord. Why, you've never heard of it? Go look it up. The people in that part, the DAR actually went to Congress and had a proclamation made that the Battle of Point Pleasant would be considered the first battle of the Revolution. But that's just a side story. So I'm descendant from this guy, so it's in my DNA, it's in my blood to love this nation. And so while I was watching what was happening, I'm like, God, here I am writing the story of America's founding. Do you know how hard that is, to get pumped up and excited to write America's great story and this incredible thing that God helped us do? And I'm watching it being demolished as I'm writing how it came to be. That's kind of hard, and I've got writer's block. And there's a lot of words in me, as you're going to find out by the end of the night. I had nothing. I got nothing. I was like frozen because my spirit was frozen. Well, I had never heard of this guy named Pastor Jack Hibbs or this church named Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills, until a girlfriend of mine, Claire Fultz, she has been my main muse in all my books, and she sent me a link. She says, I think you'll enjoy this. And it was a Happening Now with Pastor Jack and Amir. And so I watched it, and then I was hooked. Got me immediately, because I was hungry to look at the prophecies and match them up with today's headlines. You know, I'd studied prophecy. I knew it was coming. We all know how the story ends. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, we've already read the end. You know, culture hasn't a clue. So anyway, I binge watched all of Happening Now. I went to the very beginning, and I think you were meeting in some outdoor place or whatever. It wasn't here. But it's like I binge listened, driving up and back to Williamsburg, as a matter of fact, and I listened to one after another. And then I started listening to Pastor Jack on Sunday morning and Wednesday night and following Amir on Telegram. Okay, so I'm all in the club now, you know, these two guys. And then Pastor Jack gave a brief talk, and he was standing in front of George Washington kneeling in the snow at Valley Forge. And I can't even remember exactly what he said, but this is what the Lord said to me through Pastor Jack in that moment. He said, Jenny, you do the last thing I told you to do. Don't look at the world. Don't listen to them. Because the world was telling me, why are you killing yourself to write this? Y'all, it's exhausting for me. I have a personal library of 400 books on the American Revolution because Jenny's incapable of reading a book without a pen in her hand. I got to mark up all my books, right? And I devour it. And so it's a lot of work. It's hard to research and write these books. And so the enemy knows how to push my button. He's like, just stop. Why are you killing yourself to do this? No one cares about American history anymore. They're tearing it down. They tear down a statue, rip out this chapter of a book, not teach it anymore. And in my weariness, for a second, I'm like, well. And then comes Pastor Jack, and he, so the Lord says, don't listen to all of that. You do the last thing I told you to do till either I come get you personally or I come get all of you. And y'all, it was like, it just knocked me out of it. I was free. And then I became a machine. And then I finished my book. And so, thank you, Pastor Jack. So that's why I got out of my funk. And that began this journey with you, my church family from far away. Yeah. So here's the deal. What book is your life chapter going to be in? His story or their story? Because guess what? We get to decide that every day, don't we? Whose book do you want to be a character in? Our part in American history will either be written by God or the culture, and it's happening right now before us, right? And again, they want to erase our country's history, and they want to use us to conform and rewrite theirs. And every one of us gets to decide what that's going to look like. But Scripture tells us, right? Romans 12:12, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Oh, I love that verse. And renewing your mind, when it comes to the subject of American history, involves a relentless pursuit of the truth with passion, right? And fierce intention for getting it right. Listen, I exhaust myself to research down to the tiniest detail. One time I spent 4 hours trying to find the color of a lapel for some British unit for a one line in a book because it had to be right. And here's the deal too. If I have non-believers reading my books and some historian who's not a believer sees this one tiny detail that 99.9% of people will never know, and he'll say, man, she got that right. Doesn't that give credibility to all my work and glorify God? Listen, whatever you're supposed to do, it should be top shelf, excellent, best. I don't care if it takes me 10 hours to find the color of a lapel. I'm going to do it, right? So fierce intention to get it right. So does history matter? Do you like history? Oh, it just warms the heart to hear that, yeah. So you were like this kid at school, ooh, me, right? He just couldn't wait to answer the question, or were you this kid? And some of us had terrible teachers that didn't get us excited about history, and that's a shame. But you just need to get over that right now, because history's important, right? And you've heard this. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Are we not seeing it now? Don't we see it all the time? Yeah. So stories matter and history matters because it's one of the same. History is just saying hi to a story. There you go. See, now you can like history if you've never loved it before. Eldridge also said this, one of the deepest of all human longings is the longing to belong, to be part of things, to be invited in. We want to be part of the fellowship like Frodo in The Lord of the Rings. You are part of America's story. You're part of her past, her present, and her future. Did you know that? How can you be part of her past? Why did the founding fathers do what they did? Who did they do it for? Us. You're part of her past. And certainly the present, and certainly the future. You personally have a past, present, and a future. It's called your story. And some people think, oh, I'm not important. I met a lovely gentleman when I got here who says, I'm a nobody. I just want to tell you hi. And I said, blasphemy, you know? Your story is important because your story becomes the story of kids, your family, your school, your classroom, your workplace, your community, your church and your outreach, your city, your state, and your country, all of these things. Listen, never take a moment's thought that you're not important to this nation. One of the things I love to do, and one reason why my books end up being as big as doorstops, is because when I'm doing this research, I get all the stories, you know, that we all learn about Washington crossing the Delaware and all that, but there's so many unsung heroes, and I uncover these stories and had these obscure little people that no one's ever heard of, not done what they did, the outcome of the revelation could have been different. And so I was like, well, I got to tell them about this, and I got to tell them about that. And that's why the books just grow this long. And so Jenny sets out to write one book on the American Revolution, and now I'm up to 6, pushing 7. But it's important. And that's another reason, too. I feel like my service to my country is cataloging her history in this level of detail, down to individuals that no one's ever heard of before. But you need to know all of history. Is it okay just to know the stuff we like, the good? And, you know, culture, what do they want to do? They want to erase the bad, right? La, 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 that didn't happen. You got to know the good, so you'll do what? Repeat it. You got to know the bad and the ugly, so you'll do what? Avoid it. And, you know, the whole thing, you know, we were talking about statues and stuff. Listen, even the bad guy statues, of course, we don't want a statue of Hitler to go admire, but you know what? I think they need to have a bad guy section in museums and say, okay, here's all the bad guys. This is what you don't do. Because guess what? If they're not there, and, you know, you erase that and act like it never happened, then you have people doubting that the Holocaust ever happened. Is that happening right now? Right? So we need reminders of the bad. And you need to know your personal history too, good, bad, and ugly. I don't care. Once you know your personal history, you know, listen, parents, and I'll tell you this about your kids. You shoot them straight with the truth. Kids can handle the truth. They can't handle some mystery or dark secret back in the family. Tell them. Shoot them straight. My grandmother always said it, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been. So I was invited to speak at history camp at Valley Forge. This is an adult history camp, okay? History Geeks Unite, and we get to go to seminars and lectures on history. Oh, it's heaven. Not like this heaven, but it's history heaven. So it's called History Camp. Look it up online. It's awesome. There was one in Boston a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't be there because I had to go to New York. But anyway, so I prepared this talk. No history, no future. No history, no future. Patrick Henry was once asked by a law student, what book should I study? And he said, study men. If you study men and mankind, you're going to know what's coming in the future. So just as I was doing that, this article hit from the Wall Street Journal. 8th graders' history civics test scores hit record low. Yay! Such heartwarming news, right? And it just showed this tanking of our kids. We know this is happening. And in the article, it talked about, you know, just one of the directors says, I'm so afraid for our democracy. And that irked me. You know, it's like I flinch, and it's like a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. It's like that might be a problem right there, that the person who's heading this thing doesn't even call us what we are. But it said that a lot of it was, you know, being caused by all this politicizing and all of this. And teachers are weary of it. But then and we know all of that, but I love this guy. I follow him on Instagram. I've never met him, but 1776 Commission. And he made a great case for the problem of teaching history in the classroom. And I highlighted a couple of things. He said, we roughly have 160 days of 40-minute instruction to cover colonialism in the 1600s all the way through the late 1800s. That's 300 years of history smashed into roughly 100 hours of time. Thank goodness I'm not a teacher. They'd never leave the classroom, right? So to accomplish this goal, they have to take a big, broad view, right? They have to cover the basics. They can't get in the nitty-gritty like I do in my stories. And he says, many amazing stories, events, people are left on the cutting block. It's rather a matter of time. Also, there's only so much info you can cram into the head of a TikTok generation with the attention span of 15 seconds. But this is what I really loved. Learning history is a lifelong pursuit that should not end after 12th grade. So, whose responsibility is it to learn American history? Yours, mine, anybody that wants to call this place home, especially adults. Don't you put this all on the kids. I'm getting some fans in the audience. The kids going, yeah, right? Every single one of you, if you call yourself an American and you want to live here, you got to know this history. I think that's a responsibility of we as citizens of this republic. So let's pick on adults. Yeah, thanks. So I did this, this is not scientific, this anecdotal survey, but I did some survey with some of the history groups that I'm a member of. And I'm going to show you some things of what your fellow Americans think, okay? So just show you who they were. And this was the State of America's History survey that I did. And so most of them are old people, 34 and up, right? So not a lot of kids. And most of them were parents or grandparents, historian, author, but you had professors there, you had public, private, and homeschool, and then you had a couple of kids. So that's just who did this. So this is the audience participation part of our program. So I'm going to ask a question, and I want you, don't yell it out loud, just think in your mind an answer, and then I'm going to show you what they thought, okay? So when did the American Revolution start? 4 years ago. 4 years ago, amen. Touche. Well, you're good, right? All right, so these are the choices. So many people say 1776. Well, isn't that when we signed the Declaration of Independence and declared it? Well, yeah. We'd been fighting a year before that happened. So then 1775, hostilities began. Yeah, but what about that Boston Massacre and Tea Party and all that stuff in 70 to 74? But what about the French and Indian War in the 1760s that caused all this debt that they had to do the taxation on it? So kind of murky, right? Gee, if you know all your history, then it doesn't really matter a date. You know the time parameters of when that started. Okay, which country did America fight to gain her independence? First, you want to laugh at the cute little 4% people. It's like, oh, bless their hearts, But actually, they're right. I say they're either really ignorant or they're brilliant. You know why? What was the first civil war in this nation? Was it the war between the states? It was the American Revolution. You did not realize we fought amongst ourselves. Only 1/3 of this nation wanted independence. 1/3 of this nation pulled it off. 1/3 wanted to remain loyal to King George III, and 1/3 were undecided. Have we changed a lot? Right. What caused the American Revolution? Number one answer, survey said, no taxation without representation. Who were America's allies? France, of course, Spain. Y'all knew about France, right? We're going to unpack that a little more if you don't know. I'll help you out with that. Germany, Hessians, no, those are the other side. India, I've never heard of that. Who was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army? I'm worried about my Cornwallis buddy up here. He needs to take another class maybe, but he was on the other side. Who wrote the Declaration of Independence? Yay, most people got Thomas Jefferson, right? Who said, give me liberty or give me death, those 7 little words that rallied a nation to independence, and it was Patrick Henry, of course. Some people said Franklin, Thomas Paine, Nathan Hale. That's okay. When did the American Revolution officially end? 60% got it right. I was giving you a minute to think. Okay, 1783. That's when we signed the peace treaty. Some people said 1781, but that's just when the siege of Yorktown ended and the British gave up and Cornwallis surrendered. But did you realize that after the last major battle, it was 2 years before it was officially over? There was a lot of work that had to be done. And then all those other people in the northern part of the circle, they were just kind of out there. So this is really cool. All right, what inspires you the most to learn America's founding history? This is fascinating. Of course, the highest category is books. Yes. Okay. Reenactments, events, museums, visiting historical sites. Isn't that interesting? Now, of course, yeah, I know, these are adults and there's not a lot of teachers there. But look at this next one. So I had to ask further, okay, since these were adults, if you had to choose who or what taught you the most about America's founding history? Books, yes, okay. Look, but historic sites, reenactments, teachers only 9%. So we can get all bummed out about our school system failing our kids and teaching our kids, but we've already established it doesn't stop there. You're not done. That's just a primer to teach you American history, right? So all of these other things, and like, I love to do all these other things. Go where history lives, in Colonial Williamsburg, these places where it happened, and the reenactments. So please rate how you think America's doing in teaching the next generation her founding history. Well, no surprise that only 2% of us think we're killing it, right? The rest, we all know we stink at it. What do you foresee happening if America continues down its current path to teach her founding history? These are really good. I've got several of them, so just let me read to you. Just kick back a minute. Our youth, our next leaders, will not be prepared to lead this country. They will not know our past, so they will repeat our past mistakes and not learn from our triumphs. History will repeat itself. It has already begun. Students who don't learn accurate history of our country are prone to believe lies about its origin and gain almost a hatred instead of an appreciation of the U.S., leading to more corruption and tearing apart our unity. The Constitution will be undervalued and misconstrued, intentionally or unintentionally, and the country will not be able to stand on its founding principles. No one will care all about history and the sacrifices that have been made for our freedom. So what do you see happening if we keep going down this current path? Well, American history is going to be rewritten and taught. We'll have generations of voters who will vote for politicians, not based on their willingness to adhere and uphold the Constitution, but who will benefit them or underprivileged groups most. Is this resonating with anybody? Loss of American values, loss of world leadership position. If students are taught to hate their own country, they won't see anything wrong with destroying it. We will become like Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela. How should we change what we're doing? Put God back into school. I love that, right? Teach values that were once commonplace. Make history fun and exciting so students want to learn. That's kind of like common sense. Thomas Paine would have written that. That's common sense, right? The entire education system needs to be turned on its head. Teaching using real verified historical evidence documents is imperative. Reaching our children while they're young and impressionable is non-negotiable. Parents, don't rely on the teachers of the schools. It's your job. Encourage homeschoolers. Yay! I love homeschoolers. Yeah. Eliminate the public school system for starters. I had a feeling I'd hear that. Okay. How should we change what we're doing as a nation to teach history? Stop vilifying founding fathers. Teach children context of historical decisions. Amen to that. Teaching from a factual standpoint with an understanding of the culture back then, not fitting in our current, I always like to say our current cultural Ray-Bans. We got to see it through their spectacles, not our Ray-Bans, right? Teach students to love their own country and to be proud of its achievements. How is this not natural? It should be just natural that we do this. Yes, we should be discussing slavery and racism, but in the context of how far we've come and that we as a country are still growing in this great experiment. So what do you see as the greatest threat for the next generation to learn our founding history? The mistaken assumption of irrelevancy and biased filtration of historical facts to properly learn. Misinformation, the media, and Hollywood. The lack of teaching it thoroughly and correctly in schools, their complete saturation of social media, Marxism, wokeness in the public schools, information that government-funded programs or schools pass down to our children. Apathy, self-indulgence, obsession with video games at an early age. Why if they have some rockin' history video games? Now that I could get behind, you know. They don't care about the past. Politicians and parents trying to erase history they don't like, standardized testing, politicizing of history by fringe groups and amateur historians. And I love this. We've lost the ability to look at history with nuance. People aren't all good or bad. We need to study all aspects of history to learn from it. That's what's in danger now. So do you like researching history? Some of y'all like this kid still, you know. Some of you like this. I mean, you just live inside of books, you know. I mean, I could just stay in a book all day. So welcome to my life. This is like my stack of 400 books on the American Revolution, and Casey can attest to this. I carry around stacks of books with me all over the house, and at the end of the day, I look just like that. I'm covered in them, okay? But I love it, and it keeps growing and growing. And that's one thing that I always spoiled our son Alex on, was books. I don't care. You want a book? I get you a book. You know, never you know. If you're going to spoil them on something, let it be books. So just to tell you a little bit about why I'm doing what I do, how I do what I do. So my goal is to make history fun, make it relatable to kids with stories. We've already, you know, laid the foundation that, yeah, stories. Everybody likes stories. It's how we learn. It's how we figure out life. So these are covers of my first 8 books. So I have talking animals that go through time. So let me just give you a brief overview so you know what I do. So in the first book, The Ark, the Reed, and the Fire Cloud, these animals meet on the way to Noah's Ark, and they foil a plot by a stowaway who's out to kill Noah and wipe out the human race. So because they save the day, God chooses them to save the day through pivotal points of human history. Book 2 is Joseph. Book 3, The Prophet, the Shepherd, and the Star, is Isaiah, the whole book of Daniel, and the Christmas story. Book 4, The Roman, the 12, and the King, is the life of Christ told within the story of Handel writing the Messiah. Book 5, The Wind, the Road, and the Way, is Acts 1 through 18. And The Fire, the Revelation, and the Fall is the rest of Acts all the way through Revelation to the fall of Rome. So those last 4 books novelize the whole New Testament, which is fun. And now I'm on a 6-book set on the American Revolution. So as you heard me tell John Scott, with The Voice, the Revolution, and the Key, it starts with the founders are kids. And it goes all through all the causes leading up to revolution to liberty or death. Declaration, Sword, and Spy is Lexington and Concord through the Declaration of Independence. And now I'm going to continue on. And after I finish the Revolution, I'm going to do C.S. Lewis and World War II. Okay? If I live that long, I think I'll be writing in heaven. I don't think I'll ever finish here. And by the way, this is a side thing. You know, y'all, I think we'll keep doing what we were trained and loved and wired to do in heaven. Do you think we'll ever stop loving stories? I think I'm never going to get to quit. But how fun is it? I'm going to be able to go right up to Patrick Henry and say, okay, now what were you really thinking here? And I can take notes right from the guy, right? It'd be awesome. So just to explain how these books work, you know, so you're like, oh, little animals, I can't take you seriously. Hang on. Okay, so I like to call it like a 3-layered s'more, okay? So I have 3 genres in one. So history is the bottom layer, and this is what I have to exhaust in all my books. History is stuff that what? Really happened, right? So you have to exhaust all of that, all we can possibly know. And then fiction is the stuff that what? Didn't happen, but when you layer it on top of history, it has to be plausible, right? I can't have George Washington say, let's launch a nuclear warhead over at King George III. Well, why? I can't do it. It hadn't been invented yet, but that would not be true to his character. If I'm going to bring a character to life, I've got to know their mind and their heart really well and stay true to that. So I use a lot of original documents and letters and their dialogue from their letters to make it real. And then the fantasy is chocolate. This is how it works with the animals. Do we know every single thing that happened in history? We might know when or how or who, but maybe not what or how or who. And so I look for those moments where we don't know what happened, and that's where I slide this animal team in. And they're the agent that made that happen. I don't alter the history because you can't mess with the history, but it makes it super fun. And the humans are clueless. Little cute little animals around, and they're making all this stuff happen. And 2 of these characters are spiritual beings, and they can take any shape or form. So if Jesus needs some tax money, here comes a fish with a coin in its mouth. Or he needs a donkey to ride into Jerusalem. You get the picture, okay? Or a great letter needs to be written. Liz, my cat, and Nigel, my British mouse, they're really great with a quill, writing anonymous letters. Okay, so that's how I slide them in. So let's get your historical juices and enthusiasm going with history again, okay? So this book covered March 75 to 76. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories, just a couple of snippets. Stories you have heard and stories that you haven't heard, because there's always more to the story. Oh, see what I did there? Yeah. Okay, so Lexington and Concord, what's the story? Well, Sons of Liberty spy master Dr. Joseph Warren, who was one of our most fabulous founding fathers. How many of you have heard of Dr. Joseph Warren? See, look how sad, all three of you, right? Go learn him, y'all. He was amazing. Anyway, he's the one that sends out Revere by sea, Dawes by land, to go sound the alarm that the redcoats are coming to steal the powder, because a proclamation had gone out to all the royal governors, hey, we can't let those rebels defend themselves. We need to take their ammunition, their powder, right? You want someone to take your guns and your powder, right? So it didn't set too well with the Patriots. Anyway, so Paul Revere goes out riding and he yells, "The British are coming!" Is that what he said? Nope. Why didn't he say the British are coming? Isn't that what you've always been taught? He didn't say the British are coming because we were all British. Everybody would have been coming, right? He said the regulars are out. But that shows you the power of a poem and words. Listen, my dears, and you will hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere. So he said the regulars are out. So who actually made it to Concord? Not Revere, not Dawes. This guy named Dr. Samuel Prescott, he was sitting in Lexington and he hears the bell ringing, and he jumps on a horse and he joins those guys. They got caught by the redcoats, and Prescott's the one that made it to Concord. So Lexington and Concord. Go to these places. I'm standing at this really cool rock there. I love going to Lexington Green. Who fired the first shot? We don't know. All these years, we don't know if it was the British or the Patriots. So guess what I get to do? I get to pick. Who fired the shot and the gun? Guess who so just happened to be standing there? A French spy named Beauvoir. We'll come back to him in a second. Williamsburg, Virginia, what's the story? 2 days later, same thing's happening in colonial Williamsburg. Lord Dunmore goes to steal the powder from this magazine. And this is me doing research at night. In order to write the scene, I had to go out to the magazine at night, and it was raining and everything, but I didn't care. It's for the children, you know. So Patrick Henry is not happy about this. Just 3 weeks earlier, he'd given his "Give me liberty or give me death" speech, urging Virginia, you be ready. He says, you think that mess happened up north can't happen here? Think again. We need to be ready and armed. And so Patrick Henry picks up his musket, and he's the one that led the militia to go get this powder back, made the demand at Dunmore, said, either you give us our powder back or you pay for it. And Dunmore went running off screaming like a girl escaping Williamsburg, right? And then he eventually said, okay, I'll give you your powder back. And then Patrick Henry said, fine, great. Okay, gentlemen, let's disperse. Violence was averted, and they went back. They handled it correctly, right, as it's supposed to be. Is it enough just to say the words and not have the action? You could say the words all day long, but if you're willing to take the action and step up and do it, that's one reason why I love our Pastor Jack, for putting his money where the mouth is, you know? I mean, he tells us to do these things and then encourages and he rallies us all to be good citizens in appropriate ways, as we should. So here's a great s'more. Get this. So Governor Dunmore actually makes a proclamation and makes Patrick Henry an outlaw after that. And a year later, Patrick Henry's elected the first governor of the state of Virginia, and he moves into the governor's palace. Isn't that awesome? Well, I told you that I have this gift from the Lord to make history come alive. And so I thought I'd make Patrick Henry come alive for you.
Good day, friends and countrymen. I am Patrick Henry, Jr., Esquire, Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I speak to you from Williamsburg, the colonial capital of the Old Dominion, where the idea of America first had the seeds sown. I am informed by my longtime friend and correspondent, Jenny Cote, that Pastor Jack Hibbs of the Black Robe Regiment is conducting a symposium on the idea of reclaiming history. I can think of no more virtuous and worthy a cause. I personally believe that history is the most important as well as fascinating subjects that can be learned by our society. History teaches us many things. It teaches us, for example, that power corrupts. It teaches us that those men with some power always want more. And finally, history teaches us that those men who have successfully become tyrants or despots have always understood that in order to become so, the first thing they must needs do is deprive the citizenry of those God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. It was here in Williamsburg that we determined that we would no longer be subjects to some distant monarch, but rather citizens in a self-governing nation. And when we made that determination, we placed a great responsibility upon the shoulders of each and every one of you to be ever vigilant, ever well-informed, and very knowledgeable in history. For if we should ever become so apathetic or indifferent a people that we pay no attention to what those men in government are up to, then we very richly deserve the form of government we get. I do hope that Pastor Hibbs is within hearing of this, because I'm given to understand we have a mutual friend, Mr. Samuel Adams of Massachusetts Bay, with whom I served at the First Congress. I am flattered indeed that many refer to him as the Northern Patrick Henry, an honor which I shall take with me to my grave. Wishing you all the best, Godspeed, and God save the fighting men in the field.
Oh, I just love Mr. Henry. Yes. All right, let's continue on our little history lesson. Philadelphia, what's the story? So, after the French and Indian War, the French wanted revenge. They were humiliated by the British, right? So they wanted to get back, and they were waiting for the right time. So remember our French spy at Lexington? So he watches what's going on, and he had a buddy spy with him, and they're watching the buildup of this siege around Boston, and so they go not back to France, they go to England, to the French embassy, and they said, hey, there's some trouble brewing there with the Patriots. This might be our time to act. So King Louis said, hey, Beaumanoir, he says, you go back and you find Ben Franklin. And you got to have the super secret meeting and talk under the table. Hey, y'all need some powder? Y'all need some guns? It's got to be super secret because we can't get pulled into this war yet. And so in Carpenter's Hall, anybody been to Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia? Everybody goes to Independence Hall. This is where it all started, okay? So 7 months before we even declared independence, upstairs in that arched windows, John Jay and Ben Franklin met with this spy, and French aid began 7 months before we declared independence, right here, right down this alley. This is also where the First Continental Congress met, 250 years this September. The first prayer of Congress, Pastor Jack, happened right there, right? And this is where Patrick Henry declared, I am not a Virginian, but an American. Because he saw they were already fighting with their first meeting. And he says, no, we got to come together to do this thing. The first Pentagon's also right here. See that building over my right shoulder? That was when Henry Knox became the first Secretary of War. That was our first Pentagon. So go there before you go to Independence Hall. And also, the first library in America is upstairs. And I was like, they probably had to call security to pull me out of here in December. I was like, I don't want to leave. Yeah, the first library. And I'm so excited. I've been talking to Carpenter's Hall about doing a history workshop in that room. Can't wait. So, okay. I'm sorry. I get so excited about history. Okay, so Philadelphia, what's the story? So we've been fighting for a year. How many people in America wanted independence? Only 1/3. Do you realize, again, how amazing this is that we pulled this off? So Congress finally agrees to declare independence, and they get Thomas Jefferson, who's known as the pen of the Revolution. By the way, so Patrick Henry is called the voice of the Revolution. Why? Because he was the first one to speak out against tyranny. He was the first one to rally the nation. He was the first one to call King George a tyrant when everybody else was afraid to do so. Sometimes it takes one person to be the first one to speak out, like somebody I know over there. Yeah, he's the current voice of the revolution, right? And George Washington is known as the sword of the revolution. Why? Because he led us militarily, all 3 Virginia boys. So anyway, there was a committee of 5 that did this, and Ben Franklin and John Adams, they made their changes to the Declaration of Independence before it got to Congress. By the way, here's a s'more. Independence Hall was named by a Frenchman, Lafayette. When he came to visit, he says, I wish to see your Hall of Independence. And that's how it became known as Independence Hall. Stick with me, you'll learn a thing or two. So this is the room where it happened. So Thomas Jefferson submits a clean copy to Congress, but no one knows exactly how they made the edits. I looked everywhere. The process, what, did they take sticky notes? We know they had it laid out there. Did people put their sticky notes out there on how they want? No one knows the process of how they made these edits. That's very convenient for me. So Liz and Nigel, my black cat and British mouse, just had to make some edits in the night to leave notes on suggestions, because Congress added 2 references to God that were not in the original declaration that Thomas Jefferson submitted. And here they are in red. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions. That was one. And then this is the other one. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Amen. So those 2 references to God were put in, but no one knows who exactly did it. I do. Okay, so that day, everybody thinks, oh, those signatures, they stand up in a line, and no, only John Hancock and Secretary Thompson signed it on July 4th. It wasn't until August till all the guys signed that. But it was read on July 8th with fireworks. Copies called the Dunlop broadsides were sent to every colony and to France, where Silas Deane was finishing that relationship with France and getting all that started with French aid. The Declaration of Independence was not primarily for American colonies or for King George. Guess what? It was primarily for France. Why? So the secrets could stop. France needed us to declare so they could come out officially and enter the war. And it became a world war when France did so. Okay, but it took a while for that to happen. But they needed a declaration. They needed us to declare that we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We would not have won our independence without France. How many people knew that? It's been said upwards to 90% of our gunpowder came from France. Think about that. It's kind of hard to win a war, shoot a gun without gunpowder. So speaking of France, because I had to go back to France, it's for the children. So Chavignac, France. What's the story? Marie-Joseph Paul Yves Rochebert de Moutier, Le Marquis de Lafayette. Everybody want to say that with me? Okay. He was born in this room in Chavignac in the south of France. So, of course, I had to go see it. But I thought y'all might like to hear from Lafayette, too. And we will in just a second. But he was this 19-year-old kid. He's sitting at a dinner in Metz with his regiment, and he hears none other than King George III's brother, who was the black sheep of the family, talk about what's happening in the colonies. And he pulls out his sword that night. He says, I would go fight for her. And they said, sit down, Monsieur le Marquis. You're not going anywhere. Because England and France were not at war at that moment, as my friend likes to say. So he has to escape out of France. And he arrives at a crucial moment. Washington was not having a good turn of events. He was losing right and left. And there was this thing called the Conway Cabal. They wanted to cancel George Washington. The culture wanted to cancel Washington and get somebody else. Lafayette arrives just in time when that was all happening. Washington needed a friend, and he immediately became like best friends with Lafayette, and it's like his adopted son. And Lafayette was one of the ones that let Washington know what was happening with this Conway Cabal, this betrayal. And then he became like our bridge between France as our first friend to help secure the aid we needed. So let's hear a little bit from Lafayette in 1824.
My dear friends, it is truly a joy to be back upon American soil, to be a guest of the nation. And I'm reminded of those few that still survive from the war, from the sacrifice that they had made, all they had given to achieve this nation of the United States of America. I am reminded of that last moment with General Washington, in which we spent 2 glorious weeks at his beloved Mount Vernon, reflecting upon the war and the future of this nation. We rode on to Annapolis in Maryland, said goodbye to many of the officers we had the honor and privilege to have served with, and then rode on to Marlborough in Maryland, and that is where we would say our goodbyes. Now, Washington said this to me. He said, Monsieur le Marquis, I sincerely believe that the easy part was winning this war. I could not imagine he would say such a thing, after all of the trials and tribulations we had been through. But he explained himself further by saying, I do believe that the much more difficult part will be for these 13 former colonies that have now formed 13 United States, well, getting along with one another, surviving into the future. Well, my dear friends, look at how far you have gone. From 13 to 24 United States. You have endured war, civil strife, turmoil, yet you have endured. And why is that? Well, I dare say it is because of the foundation that was built at the price of so much sacrifice and blood by you, the American patriot. In fact, I will go further. I will say that one day this nation shall serve as a beacon for all of the nations to look to as the truest example of freedom and of independence. God bless you all, my dear friends, and God bless this great nation of the United States of America!
So I was in 1824 with Lafayette last weekend in New York. President Monroe, in 1824, believe it or not, there was this contentious election happening. And the country was divided, and it was a mess, the presidential election. And we were close to celebrating the 50th year of our independence. And so President Monroe invited the Marquis de Lafayette, General Lafayette, to come back for a tour of America because everybody loved Lafayette. He had a way of bringing everybody together. And so for 13 months, he went to all 24 states, and he was feted, and he gave speeches like that. And America, they remembered their patriotism. They remembered why we became independent and how we came together. And it was a very healing thing. So I'm in part of an organization called the American Friends of Lafayette, which was founded in 1932 to remember the history of Lafayette and the French Alliance. And so we just kicked off last weekend in New York City, the bicentennial of Lafayette's event. This is going to be 13 months. Go to Lafayette200.org and you'll see all these events in every state all the way down. Well, my part of service in this, everybody had a part to play. Oh, and I had the privilege to hang out with Lafayette's descendants, his beautiful ladies, and the lady in red, Virginie. I know her uncle, who's Count Lafayette. He's the 5th great-grandson of Lafayette, and I had to dine with him in Paris because it was for the children. I love my job. I have the best boss. Thank you, God. I love what I do. Anyway, so I was honored to head up the Lafayette Essay Contest for 4th and 5th graders around the nation. And the deal was to see, okay, who is Lafayette? What does he mean to America then and now? It was a contest, and the winners were invited, first, second, and third place winners, to come to New York for this event last weekend and read their essay. Well, our second place winner, Caroline Grow, was from Delaware, and she and her family came. And this charming little girl had never heard the name Lafayette. And she wrote this magnificent essay, and she stood on the stage, and she got a standing ovation with hundreds of people there. And then she got to go to the French consulate with us, and there she is wearing her sash of second place winner. It was so awesome. And the CEO of Colonial Williamsburg happened to be in the audience, and he said, Caroline, I want to invite you and your family. You're going to come to Williamsburg on us. And so it was amazing. And this little girl had never heard of this name Lafayette. This is how you inspire the next generation. Do a contest. You know, give them a reason to do it. Yeah, if you have to pay them, sure, you know. She got $500, but still, you know, is that price to pay for maybe launching a future historian, writer here? Was birthed this night, I think. I really do. Another way that the Lord has used me, and I feel like this is some of the most important work that I've ever done, this super cool ranger here from California moved to South Carolina, and his name is John Slaughter, and he became the superintendent for the National Park Service for the Southern Campaign. And I met him, and I went to the reenactment at Cowpens. I said, hey, I do stuff for kids. You want me to do some living history sometime? He said, could you do a whole week? And I'm like, sure. And they had just gotten a government grant to put on a writing camp for kids. But he said, we want to make it fun, so let's do it around your your characters and stuff. So I developed Epic Patriot Camp. And so the kids, I said, you got to make it personal. So these kids assumed the identity of a patriot or loyalist who was at the Battle of Kings Mountain. I taught them how to research their character. They dressed out every day in this stuff. This first day, this kid was so mad that his mom had sent him to a writing camp. He was furious. He was playing his little digital thing. By the end of the week, he was the first one to change out of his clothes and rush and go put that on and to tell me what he learned about his character. It was awesome. So they wrote about, their character, and this was awesome. And we did it for several years at Kings Mountain and then Cowpens and the muster ground at Aberdeen, Virginia. And I would regale them with my stories. This is me standing at Washington's Crossing, where Washington crossed the Delaware. I go to events like that. Me at Valley Forge, I got to go research and see what's going on there and show them all my research history. This is me with the Over Mountain Men that reenact the march to Kings Mountain every year, and I cross the Watauga River with them. They're not my Over Mountain Man outfit. Well, I'm not going to wear my dress, okay? So I got my, I loved it. I love hanging out with these guys every year. They make history just live afresh for me. Well, COVID killed that camp. So my dear author friend Libby McNamee, who is a fabulous author, check out her books. I said, Libby, let's try this virtually. We can't give them the same experience, of the hands-on and making musket balls and doing all this stuff and marching, but we can teach them how to research and how to write history. And so we did it. We had about 25 kids come from all over the U.S., one from Canada, and he can't be here today because he's now in college, but he said, Ms. Cote, he said, Epic Patriot Camp confirmed to me that I want to be a writer. Now he's studying journalism. But anyway, I said, so we can't give them the physical experience, but we can publish their books. So we showed them how to publish books on Amazon, and 25 young people published, we had it 2 summers, published their books on Amazon. We didn't think anything was going to happen with these books, but lo and behold, we were able to get them in the Revolution Museum at Yorktown, and they had a signing with us on Yorktown Day in Yorktown, and their books are on the shelf with us. So these kids, 10 to 19, they went from just normal kids hanging out at a summer camp and meeting published authors having a book signing in one of the best museums in the country. It's amazing. Then the Boston Tea Party Museum picked it up in Mount Vernon. It's awesome. Claire Foltz, I told you, the gal who sent me the text about Happening Now, she wrote my curriculum because I'm not qualified to do it. She's AP history teacher and homeschool mom. And so, because I had parents and grandparents said, I'm having to teach history now. I don't know how to do this stuff. And I'm like, do you have a curriculum? I'm like, well, I'll make one. So I got Claire to do that. I also had a gal who'd been homeschooling her girls raised on my books, and she started teaching classes in Virginia. And she's also from California. A lot of cool people come from California, y'all. So I said, well, you want to try to take it online? So we did. We've done 2 semesters. And some of my students, they're going to be at Riley's Farm tomorrow and at Calvary, Rick Barsh, and their kids are going to be there. Hey, Judah, if you're watching, Eliana. But this is her, and y'all, she's an attorney, and she has taught constitutional law and homeschooling. You want something really smart to teach your kids history? Check this out, okay? And I've got flyers and stuff there. But yeah, she's amazing, the most godly woman. Audiobooks. A lot of kids learn different ways. So this is Denny Brownlee, the miracle of my books. He did 150 voices in The Voice of the Revolution and the Key. He doesn't just read, he acts it out. It's like a drama. And he is amazing. So we got the audiobooks there. And then he said, hey, let's do something cool. Let's make it a podcast. And so we'll take the audiobook, and then we'll have Max and Liz talk, and then you can come on behind the scenes and kind of give some tips on writing or this and that. So we turned it into a podcast. And look, you and I, we're doing this together. This is how we are inspiring, because the Real Life Network picked up our podcast. Isn't that awesome? So we've got the ARC audio and this, and then we're going to be doing a season every year for that. Hey, Denny. And then this just launched this week. So I've had people and homeschoolers like in Australia say, we can't get to your workshops. Can you film them? So we did. And then we just put them up on the Real Life Network this week. So there's workshops there, writing workshops and history workshops. So check that out on Real Life Network. What's next? Well, I want to make movies. I want to make a Revolution series. Like, remember Liberty's Kids, Yeah. The animated one, I was like, well, we need a new one now. And we've been working on trying to get the Art, the Ring, the Fire Cloud as an animated feature film for 17 years. And we've come close several times, but there's this thing called money, $30 million. You know, we could take up a love offering tonight. Oh, that'd be so sweet. No. Listen, I was talking earlier, God's got more money than God. It's a non-issue. And so God has led me. I've got 2 animation studios, a movie production company that wants to distribute it. The script is written. I've got voice talent. I've done everything I can, but I just need this little thing called money. But God will bring it when it's supposed to happen, you know. And God's led me to amazing people. Y'all, there's a animation celebrity in the house, and he's sitting on the front row there, and he's got a baseball cap on. This is Davy Liu. He's a former Disney animator. He did Simba in The Lion King. He did Mulan. He did Beauty and the Beast. And he has, check out his Can-Do Kids. He does amazing stuff. He also wants to do an art film. And In-N-Out Burger is helping him fund his, but we both need money. So anybody out there who wants to get involved in making history live for kids, call me, okay? But in God's perfect time, not mine. It's all his. They're all his books. They're all his movies. Whatever he wants to do, whatever. You know, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien didn't get to see their movies. I'll see it in heaven. That's fine. Okay, so I know I got to bring this home. So what about writing your story? Start small. Can you identify the author in this picture? And it's not the cat. Okay? Did I know I was going to be an author? Gee, you think God had a clue? Yeah, he knew before the foundation of the world what he wanted me to do. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. This is me with my brother Joe, who knew he wanted to be a surgeon by the time he was 8. And that's probably him holding some boring science project, a biology thing. And I got my Peter Pan puzzle. I wanted to be a marine biologist and swim with dolphins. I wanted to be a singer on Broadway. I wanted to design greeting cards. So I had no clue what to do when I grew up. And so I wrote stories about talking fruit when I was 8 years old. So when I met Phil Vischer, I said, I wrote Fruity Tales long before you wrote Veggie Tales. He said, well, I published mine. I'm like, fine. It's like, Mother, you didn't save my manuscript. Anyway, I grew up in a wonderful home. My father, Dr. Paul Mims, Paul and Janice Mims, wonderful pastor, First Baptist Church of Norfolk. And I had the most heavenly childhood. And we were sailors. And Dad used to take off the month of August on Chesapeake Bay to live on a sailboat with no air conditioning for a month. And it was heaven for me. I love it hot. Some love it. I love hot, sticky sweat. With a sea breeze to cool you off. I mean, ocean air is my oxygen. So I had this happy childhood, and then God called my dad down to a church in Atlanta, and life was over for me. I was devastated. I was heartbroken. Young people, if you have had to endure a move that broke your heart, there's a reason for it. Hang on. I didn't know that God was calling me to be an author. This pain had to happen because this move made me an author. And I'll explain. I had 2 marketing degrees, okay? I was working at the Children's Hospital. So rewarding working for sick kids, but this divine discontent kicked in. I'm like, I'm not doing what I was meant to do. This isn't it. Well, my husband Casey's family had a house in St. George Island, Florida, and I was walking up from the beach one day, and we had new neighbors, and they renamed their house Now I See, SCA. And I stood in the middle of the road, and I thought, that would make a great title for a book. And so I wrote this book. I had no clue what I was doing. But that's when God whispered in my ear, and he said, this is what I want you to do. This is how you're going to be part of my story. I didn't know anything about publishing, so I self-published it. I had to start somewhere. Y'all, I could only afford to have it half-edited. And Pastor Jack and Lisa loved it as is. So that shows you what God can do with your meager little loaves and fishes, right? It doesn't matter. Do your best. If he's called you to do it, he's going to equip you for it, okay? I started small, and I answered God's whispering call. Well, I had this idea, so I self-published that book, and I had it on our church bookshelf, and a literary agent was visiting, and she said, she saw the book and she approached me. Hey, I'd like to represent you. Do you have anything else? I said, well, I got this idea for this dog and this cat. And so I started, that's the real Max and Liz that inspired this whole thing. I was watching them play fight one day, and I thought, when did dogs and cats first get on each other's nerves? Maybe when they were cooped up on Noah's Ark for a year. And I was like, bing, what would that look like? So anyway, that's how this whole book series is going. So just to show you a couple of adventures, when God is your boss, it's so awesome. So for book 4, The Life of Christ, it's told within the story of Hannah riding Messiah. So does God ever talk to y'all? Like, God whispered to me one Christmas Eve, he says, you need to get over to London and write in Handel's composing room. I'm like, really? Awesome. I called him up that night, or emailed him. I said, hey, could I come over there and write in Handel's composing room one night? And they said, yes. Ask big for things. I got to sit alone in Handel's composing room and write the scene of him writing Messiah in the room where it happened. Do you think my inspiration was a wee bit off the charts there? Yeah. While I was in the neighborhood in London, after I do the Revolution, I'm doing C.S. Lewis in World War II. So I called up the C.S. Lewis Foundation. I said, hey, I'm going to be writing a book about C.S. Lewis. And they said, oh, would you like to stay in the kilns? I'm like, who do you think I am? I'm a busy author. Why would I want to stay in the house where the Chronicles of Narnia was written, where my writing hero lived? Is that what I said? No, I'm like, oh, really? Please. I spent 2 nights in C.S. Lewis's house. And I had to stage me sitting at the desk where his books were. And y'all, my books are still in his library. I've had readers send me pictures and say, I saw your books at C.S. Lewis's house. And I'm like, I'm fangirling over. I got to spend 3 hours in the Eagle and Child pub with C.S. Lewis's secretary, Walter Hooper, where the Inklings sat. Y'all, this is what it looks like when you're working for God. He makes stuff happen just... Sometimes I'm like Forrest Gump. I know I'm Jenny, but I'm like Forrest Gump, and stuff just happens when God's your boss. Okay, from Revelation to Revolution, I'll bring it home. I sat in St. John's Church. I called him up. I said, hey, could I come sit where Patrick Henry sat on the day it happened and write the scene of Liberty Death in the room where it happened? And they said, sure, so I did. But here's the cool thing. 10 years before I really started writing The Voice of the Revolution in the Key, God gave me this scene, and I wrote this prologue, and it takes place in New York City, and the animals, and they're all talking about these statues of founding fathers. This was 10 years before the book came out, and I'm writing about statues of founding fathers. God knew Charlottesville was coming, and he arranged for this book to come out the exact week of my book launch. God can only do these things. So I wrote this op-ed, and that's how I got on the big curvy wall thing there at Fox with my book. Y'all, God's the best publicist you could ever have. Again, he's just awesome. So what's the outcome of sharing this history to inspire the next generation? Here's some quotes I've heard from. I get all sorts of wonderful fan mail and pictures and things, but these words mean a lot to me. You're what I hope to be like when I'm older, a strong Christian, someone who's not afraid to be a little crazy, a lot crazy, and an author. These books have impacted me to be more of a Christian. Amen. I had many troubles of my own, but I never knew how to overcome them. My friends and I all love these books. We talk about them a lot, remind each other of things the characters do. Also at school, they've helped me teach my friends about Christianity. Stories. Kids can tell stories to other kids, can't they? They make sense. They show God's message that is easy to understand and intriguing. Sometimes I don't get why God did these things in history, but these characters help them understand. My children and I have sat together at dinner at night and read all 3 of these books. That's something we never used to do. Also, 2 of my 3 children have come to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior since we began reading your books. This is why I write. They changed my outlook on the Bible. Being a reader, the Bible isn't the most interesting thing to read, but now I like to compare the adventures of Max and Liz to the Word to see how it works out in both stories, and that's what I put in the front of my books. This is a fictional story based on truth. For the true story, go read, whether it's Romans or Acts or whatever it is. That's the point. Get them to go to the original Word. Take a fun story, then go look it up. Go see if I got it right. Go read the real his story. These books have also encouraged me to be a writer. Yes, something I've been wanting to do for a while, but these books made me feel like I could really do it. Awesome. But this is the best. These books have given me a newfound belief in a relationship with God. I was an atheist in an extremely Christian family. None of the church teachings or Bible camps could ever get through to me. But 5 years ago, when looking for something new to read in the library, I saw the first book. I had no idea it was a churchy book when I picked it out, but I loved it and anxiously count down the days to the next release. These books reach me in a way nothing else could. She was a college student and wrote me. That's the power of story, and that's the power of his story. And then this happened. Remember my small little beginning, my little half-baked book? I was so blessed by Pastor Jack that I sent a set of my books to them here. Here, take them. Look, this is the ministry that you've blessed. I said nothing about Now I See. Because I never did, because y'all, I've been busy marketing my, Now I See, when I published it, it just sat there as my little stepchild on Amazon. Not that I didn't love it, but I was doing other, busy with my other genre. And then, so lo and behold, I get an email from Matt, and he says, hey, Pastor Jack, Lisa, love your book. They'd love to make it a book of the year. And I'm like, what? This is only God. And so it has been a blessing. I said, that isn't in any shape or form ready. So it was a blessing to overhaul it. And Pastor Jack honored me by writing the foreword to it. And so that's why I'm here, because it's the book of the month. So don't despise small beginnings. Just start. If he's called you to it, he'll equip you for it. And look, this is coming too. I'm going to go ahead and show him this, okay? He's actually going to read the foreword for the audiobook that's coming out, and he's never done an audiobook before. Yay! I get to do this. So that's coming soon. So now it's your turn. You need to go reclaim some history, share it with someone, and then go make some yourself, okay, by writing your story. And I'm done.
That's awesome. Perfect. Excellent. So the challenge today in our educational system, why, Jenny, do you think that the system, the public school system has departed from teaching the truth when the truth is so incredibly thrilling, especially American history? Why? Why have we departed from it?
Well, it's all about the spiritual warfare that's going on. That's what it is. And truth, the war on truth, isn't that what it is? It's like, oh no, we can't have God or the truth of our founding history. They're going to find out that our founding fathers rooted everything in Judeo-Christian principles to found this nation. Oh, we can't have that because we've got to take God out of schools. Yeah. It's all about taking God out of schools and anything that points to it. And truth points to it of our founding history. And they're afraid, and they're kowtowing to the culture to erase it. No, we're not going to teach that.
Isn't it remarkable that the dynamics that we're going through right now, we're watching it on the news. We've even watched in the latest convention that ended, was it yesterday, the absence of knowledge regarding our nation's history is terrifying. And so when you see what the modern day politician is promoting, it's stuff that is, as you so well pointed out, it's already been tried. It's already been experimented with and proven to be a flop. And so what would you like to see in the United States on any level to get our kids back on track? What would you like to see? And how does it happen?
Wow. What I would like to see. I would like to see every kid mandatory field trips to Colonial Williamsburg.
Boy. Have I said that before?
Yes.
Oh,
to go see. It lives.
Yes.
When you see where it happened, then it makes a difference because, yes, we want them to read, but of course, I'd like them all to read my books, of course. That's what I'd really like.
Yeah, that's part of the tour.
Right, that's part of it, right. No, but and to see parents and families take their kids. Listen, I went on field trips with my school. I grew up in Norfolk, so I was on the school bus. And the impact that had on me, did I know as a kid running down Duke of Gloucester Street that I'd be writing the story that day? So going to see where it happened makes such a big difference. But truly studying the real actual history, going back and reading what our founding fathers read, just going back to the true history that that you and I learned growing up. And not allow all this other mess. And to give more time in the curriculum. You know, you saw that is an impossible task, you know, so maybe we need to cut out a few courses that are being offered now and increase the time devoted to history.
Oh, amen
that has
to
to happen.
Amen to that. In fact, I would argue that the discipline of studying history is the single most important topic. Somebody might say, well, how's that going to help my math? How's that going to help my reading? How's it going to help my geography? Yes, to all areas, because it gives you a reason to learn. How many of us as Christians, for example, we weren't really good students, and then you got saved, the light came on, and you started devouring books. You, at the very least, started reading the Bible. I, for one, the first book I ever read was the Bible. I, in school, would take pictures with my eyes of what was needed for the upcoming test. And, you know, this is not learning, by the way. A lot of people think they're smart. You can get a good grade if you have a photographic memory, but you better have a forever memory, not just photographic, because 3 weeks later, I couldn't answer the right, answer to that question because I cheated. I just took a picture, regurgitated it a few days later. That's not learning.
That's right.
But you mentioned something that we're very passionate about, and that is when we're not taking tours to Israel, we take God in American Heritage Tours. And it always sells out. This church fills up the buses, but it's so great to see people just come alive. You know, they're not really thinking or imagining, what are we getting ourselves into? We start in Boston, or we start in Williamsburg, or we start in DC. What's going to happen? And almost immediately, you take them to a site. For example, you take them to the Lincoln Memorial. And if you've ever been has anyone been to the Lincoln Memorial? Raise your hand. Okay, wow. Flanking Abraham Lincoln on both sides is, if I remember right, help me out, one is his second inaugural address, I believe it is. And then the other one is the Gettysburg Address. And in total, there's 4 or 5 references out of Scripture. For example, one of the famous lines is where he says, I am for peace, but my enemy is for war. That's taken right out of the Psalms by King David. A lot of people don't know that. If you don't know history, you're not going to know that here's Lincoln slipping in some history, almost like it's code. For those who will know, then they will know. Didn't Jesus say, to those who have been given, more will be given. To those who have and they don't do, then what they do have will be taken away. And so that's very, very important. But my answer to my question would be, if I could be the dictator of the Secretary of Education, if I could be the czar of that, I would do exactly what you said. I would have part of our state or nation's funding of education. Before you graduate from high school, you would have to do a history tour of, I say the East Coast. You know what I mean. I would say from Boston, but you could go all the way down to the Carolinas. But you know what we can boast of? And Jenny, maybe you can write something about this for us all and make us all famous. And it would be this. If you go to the Mission San Diego or San Juan Capistrano, right? Or Los Angeles, or I can't think of all of them. Santa Barbara, San Francisco, Buena something. Ventura? What is awesome about that is look at the dates that are on the missions, the Catholic missionary stations. Look at the dates. 1772, 1774, 75, 1776, 1777. Did you know that? The exact same time, Father Sarah was preaching the gospel to the native Californians and setting up mission stations and hospitals for the native Californians, the Indians, the indigenous of California. The gospel was being preached here, and a revolution was taking place in the state of California. We weren't even officially a state yet. But isn't it interesting that it starts in Southern California at the border and it ends in Northern California, and we weren't even an actual state? And what was going on? A spiritual revolution was taking place on the west coast of the United States, while our east coast was fighting for its spiritual freedom and liberty. Same time, on opposite ends of the continent. I love the Hebrew language does not have the word coincidence in it in Hebrew. I don't think God rolls dice. And so, do you want to take some questions from?
I will, but first of
Yeah.
all, let me say, I'm going to put that in my next Revolution book because
It's
I
gonna
can
be
have
fun.
I'm totally going to put that in the next one. I will put that in there for you.
That would be fun. I think that would be.
Absolutely. And because it's history.
You'll be the first, I think. Somebody have a question for Jenny? I wouldn't be shy. Someone's got to start it. Right over here, there's a microphone. You guys, you want to get on up and come on over? It's okay. While he's on his way, there you go.
Hi.
Oh, we need the microphone volume.
It's on? Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
So my question to you is regarding Hamilton, because Hamilton is obviously the sharing of history, and it's coming back to Los Angeles. So I wonder how accurate you think that is, or what
The
your
musical
yes, what your
Hamilton?
thoughts are on that.
Okay, well, here's a funny story. I've seen it twice. I saw it in New York, and I saw it in Atlanta. Okay, so the first time I ever heard of Hamilton, I was at an Epic Patriot Camp, and these fourth grade little girls were singing the Lafayette rap and all that, and and I was like, what are y'all singing? Oh, we love Lafayette. Oui, je m'appelle Lafayette. And they were singing all this. And so I'm like, okay, if kids are getting into this history, I need to listen to what they're doing. And so I listened to the soundtrack. I'll never forget, I was driving back from Williamsburg, and I was like, oh, I'm such a purist, and I'm like, George Washington rapping. I'm like, oh, I just had this twitch. I was like, this isn't right. And so I shut it off, and I'm like, okay, Jenny, realize that this is not period. This is. And so I listened to the lyrics, and I wanted to hear what is it these kids are hearing and learning. And then I got into it, and then I really liked it, and then I loved it. And I will say, it's very accurate. The only discrepancy I really noticed was the squishing of time. And that happens. I mean, my goodness, but, Lin-Manuel Miranda did a phenomenal job to condense so much history. And so I'm a fan. I really am. Now, there's some, why do you have to put profanity in it? Why? You're teaching history, so yeah, there's some stuff in it that, for kids I don't like. So anyway, but it was pretty spot on, yeah. It's done a lot to excite
How many
young people.
How many of you have seen it? I've not seen it. Yeah, okay. I'm so biased. I guess I'm old. Because it was like a New York thing or a Hollywood thing.
I know.
And I heard it was about, Hamilton? No, I'm not going. I gave it much thought. No, I'm not going.
But it put him on the map. It put him on the map. And it's funny what's happened. So I sit in audiences all the time in Colonial Williamsburg. And so my friend Mark Schneider, who portrays Lafayette, who you saw, he gets questioned about Hamilton all the time now. Tell me about your relationship with Hamilton. He's like, oh. So no.
That's something. Yes.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
My question is, in this age, we're so focused on the here and now. Like, what are the taxes that we have to pay? What are the bills? And for those people who see history as so far removed from them, what are ways that you enlarge your affection, that you nurture this love for history that you have? Was this always innate? Was this interest in history always innate in you? Or are there ways that you have really enhanced this affection for history?
Oh, what a great question. Well, you said the tax thing. There's a connecting point right there, right? Mm. Our founding fathers, that was one of the stickers that, caused the igniting of the revolution. There's always a point of reference. Listen, history Man doesn't change over time. We don't wear our tricorn hats anymore, but we're the same. The heart of man is the same. The problems of taxation has happened forever, the struggles that our founders had, and that's one thing. Y'all, we tend to put our founders and people back then on these pedestals, and we think they're unreachable. They were regular people like us. And so getting to know them in that regard and making them personal and get to know them, read their biographies, but yes, this was ingrained in me in the beginning from the earliest time. My dad founded Seaford Baptist Church in Seaford, Virginia, which is right by Yorktown, and my mom had to drive through the battlefields of Yorktown to get to the grocery store. And the tiny toddler in me, you have images from childhood. I can see the readouts. I can see the battlefields in my young mind. And little did I know, all of that, again, my grandmother used to say, what goes into the first of life goes throughout all of life. And so these impressions, that quote that said, you've got to get kids young, okay? And so it was ingrained in me to love history young and to appreciate history. But you can start at any age. It's not an age thing. So I would encourage parents to start your children young. And you have to be excited about it yourself. Right. That's key. And history is infectious. Have y'all gotten a little excited tonight? A little like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Have you gained a little pride about being an American tonight and our history? I hope you have, because history is contagious because it's so awesome. Yep. Right?
Yep. You know what she's talking about. You know what she's saying is true. Check out this pathology of how things go. Today we have children that have no knowledge of history because their teachers have not been taught history. And with each graduating generation, it's less and less history. But it's even worse than that. The history that they're being taught is actually revisionism. It's not even a real history. But if it's repeated enough, then they'll begin to believe that it's history.
That's right.
To make history exciting, which is important to every one of us who are parents, if you're here as a Christian or not, it's irrelevant. But if it's World War II history, if it's ancient history, it doesn't matter. You've got to make it thrilling, because it is thrilling. The reason why we murder history is because we fail to get into it when we're studying. So, mom, dad, I don't care where your kid goes to school. I don't care where it is. If it's Christian, if it's public, I do not care. You should not assume that your kid is being taught at the level that you would have it to be. If they are, thank God. But if not, mom and dad, what does the Bible tell us about teaching our kids? The Bible tells us that we're the ones that are to teach the kids. That doesn't mean your kid doesn't get taught at public school. But when they get home, we have fallen into a dangerous trap of entertainment in the evenings. It's entertainment time. And what I would like to throw out to you is that you, parent, the adult, study something. Something that you're excited, study it. If it's aviation, if it's ocean, if it's atmospherics, if it's stars in heavenly, study it. Get excited about it. Won't take long. If you've got a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old, it's not going to take long for you to spend a few hours reading about this particular constellation and then start teaching your kid that evening. And it doesn't have to be class, now stand up, raise your right hand, or no, get them in the jammies. Make it fun. Get some s'mores. Go out in the back and talk about it. And technically, if you are thrilled about it, the best teachers are the ones that are thrilled about their topic.
That's right.
All of us have been murdered by teachers in school or college that they were just getting a check.
That's right.
And they made it so hard because they didn't care if you learned it or not. If you're excited, mom and dad, your child will get excited. Don't expect your kid to get excited about it if you're not. Does it make sense? Please do that.
Hey, Jenny, thank you for coming out and sharing and bringing this tonight. I think a couple times you had mentioned during tonight that you really didn't have back in the day an anticipation towards any kind of career path or occupation towards authorship. So when you wrote your first book, I mean, you mean so many now. When you wrote your first book, do you think it was, based on your experience, was it something you felt that you were compelled to do, that you needed to do it, or was it something you did because you wanted to do it, if that makes any sense?
It was both. It started out from wanting, but think about something you're passionate about. It's both, right? You want to do it, and you're compelled to do it. And then when you get God's calling on top of that, there's no discussion, right? And so the cool thing is sometimes it takes us a while to figure out what we're called to do, but here's the beauty of it. When you are able to work in your passion, it's not work. When I was working in the corporate world and in marketing and all of that, it was work. You know, you count down, okay, how many minutes, you know, till this. When I left the corporate world and went out on this unknown writing adventure, and I love, you know, in Hebrews, Abraham, and he didn't know where he was going. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was doing. I just know I had been called and I stepped out on faith to do it. And then you saw all the stuff that happened. I didn't know how to make all that stuff happen, but that's the cool thing. When you're living in your passion and your calling, it's not work, it's fun. I work 4 to 5 times the hours I ever did in the corporate world. And I don't work a day in my life anymore. It's fun, it's joy. It takes work. So yes, and it's just, I had to write. And if you're occupational hazard, if you want to be, do you want to be a writer, or are you author, or is that a dream, or?
It's something that just recently started coming out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. So yeah, for how many people here want to be writers, aspire writers? You have a dream to write? You think you might write a book? Oh, yay, awesome, good. We'll start small, but here's the deal. Work on your craft, learn it. I went to writers' conferences. I had to learn, I network. I started my own little Inklings group with a couple of writing friends. Claire Foltz was one of them. You know, iron sharpens iron. We taught each other. I researched, I learned. I wrote about everything. And I had to find even the genre of writing that was calling to me. And I loved my devotional, Now I See. I love that book. But my calling was to write for young people and kids and history. And all of that, you know, that hindsight's 20/20. I always joke, I said, God, you just set me up, didn't you? Made me love history, you know, made me get these marketing degrees. Because here's the deal that I will tell you all. To make it as an author, you have to do 3 things well. You have to write well, you have to publish well, you have to market well. 80 to 90% of authors fail because they're missing one of those 3. Think about it as a 3-legged stool, right? And there's a lot of authors and they don't want to market, they don't know how to. And the main way that an author markets is speaking, you know, and being out there. And I don't care if you're self-published or traditionally published, whose job is it to tell the world about your books? The author. It's the author's responsibility. And, you know, so there are 9 million titles on Amazon. You can self-publish an ebook tonight if you want, okay? Truly, you can. There's no, if you want to, you can self-publish for free on Amazon KDP. It's awesome, okay? You can do that now. But how are they going to find you out of 9 million books? You've got to market, you know? So you've got to learn the craft, but it is so much fun. The learning is part of the fun of learning how to do it. And again, if God's calling you to it, He'll equip you for it. So for those of you who are in the audience who might want to write, let me just do a brief commercial advertisement here. So for one, my writing workshops are on the Real Life Network now. Ta-da! And there's one called Road. I'm actually giving it at Calvary Vista on Monday for some homeschoolers. So if y'all all want to identify as homeschoolers on Monday, I'll invite you to come. And that's on the front of my website right there, and you can find out about that. But and I'll be signing books later if you want to chat author craft too. But just write what you love, you know. If God's called you to be a writer, only you can write that story. No one else.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
I'm John. So I did 33 years in law enforcement, and I retired. And my retirement job is a substitute school teacher in the public school system. Now, this may surprise the room, but I love it. And the reason is, as a substitute, I can say whatever on my heart and mind. I don't have to answer.
This is the plan. We need substitute teachers to teach
He's
everybody.
right. He is absolutely right.
Right. I can say what's on my heart and mind because I don't have to answer to the teachers union. It's not my livelihood, so I don't have to worry about being fired. And what are they going to do? Fire me? So
I love you, man.
as far I try to stick with U.S. history, U.S. government, but occasionally I get a question from African American student that the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution was not written for them. And I can tell you how I answer it, but I'd like to hear how you would answer it.
Well, the Founding Fathers knew that they had to start somewhere, and they called it the Great Experiment, right? They knew, listen, they knew we were starting broken. Did you know that the Liberty Bell broke with the first ring? The first, okay? Did they toss it out because it had a crack in it? No, they kept using it. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, started out with inherent flaws in it, right? And they knew this. It was as perfect a system as they could do. They knew there were problems in their country with slavery, and they knew that it was going to be the next generation that was going to have to resolve it. Patrick Henry, in fact, he was a prophet. He predicted the Civil War. He said, it's coming. He says, but the Founding Fathers, they were kind of wiped out with just, okay, we're going to give you this form of government. It's always going to be up to the next generation to take the foundation and then to approve upon it and fix what's wrong, okay? And slavery, and we did it. The system they gave us worked to end it, and that's the beauty of it, and that's what I think we miss. And yes, we need to talk about what happened, but look how we fixed it, and the fact that we didn't. And if you want to talk about slavery, excuse me, what's happening? We have more slaves today than we ever had. Before. Slavery has been part of human existence from the beginning. It still is. And so, I'd love to hear what you say. What do you say?
Well, I tell them that, like the Bible, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution are not historical documents. They're living documents. 90 years after those documents were written, approximately 90 years, we fought a civil war where 500,000 people died for, to have the end of slavery, to answer that specific question. But that, we have a Supreme Court to interpret it. We had a 19th Amendment, because women didn't feel part of it. So it's a living document. When it was written, it was truth. However, and the intent was correct, but it took a while, like you said, to truly see the genius of those documents.
It is.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
So let me borrow now from John Adams and Sam Adams, and you can go research this on your own. You don't have to apologize for the Constitution regarding the blacks, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. The northern states had absolute 100% understanding that the blacks were 100% like the whites. They had no debate. There was no debate in the North. The northern colonies, they had no problem whatsoever. When you read Sam Adams on this, there is no debate that the blacks and the whites were 100% equal. It wasn't even debated. What was debated was the southern colonies.
That's right.
Right? The southern colonies, what did they have predominantly for their economy?
Slavery.
Was cotton and tobacco. So how did they utilize those crops in that industry? Slavery. So you can get a bird's eye view of this by either reading John Adams by David McCullough, or you can watch the fantastic HBO special by Tom Hanks and David McCullough called John Adams. Why? Why would you watch that? For this reason. Many of those statements are verbatim statements from original documents. You mentioned original documents tonight. I need everyone to hear them. They could not, there never would have been the United States of America. It was not going to happen. The 13 colonies wouldn't happen. John Adams said, how are we going to get 13 colonies to have, as it were, 13 clocks strike midnight at the exact same time? It's impossible. And it wasn't going to happen. And we had reached a point that it was an absolute impasse. We are not going to be the United States for this reason. We, in the North, want to abolish slavery now. The South, they said, no way, you'll destroy our economy. Why would we commit economic suicide to become one nation? For what? You're asking us to sign our death certificate. Now think about it for a moment. Forget racism or forget slavery. I get where they're coming from in the South, and I get where they're coming from in the North. So guess what happened? Help me out memory-wise. You're way younger than I am. The abolitionist movement in the United States was Franklin, what's his name? So Franklin. Come on, there's like three biggies. I can't even believe, I should remember this. Franklin was a big one. Oh my goodness. I'll think about it tonight or tomorrow at 2 a.m.
I'm sitting here going.
But here's the deal. This is what they said. They said, we're never going to get these guys to agree. We will never pull this thing off.
Right.
So they went to Dickinson and the other guys representing the South, and they said, what do you need to sign this? What do you need to get on board?
Rutledge, yeah.
Rutledge.
Well, went to Rutledge, yeah.
What do you need? So watch this. The North came over to the South and said, let's make a deal. There's no America unless you guys are on board. And the South's argument was, well, this is how we're going to see the blacks then. We'll give you this. And our Constitution, our government took it because it was a starting point.
That's right.
And there's a great dialogue between John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin about what we just accomplished. Remember, Virginia was considered the South.
Oh, yeah.
We got the ball going. I'm paraphrasing. We got the ball going. We'll change it over time. It's a place to start. You said that very rightly. And they predicted as well the Civil War. There would have, the only way that, something to the effect, the only way this is going to be rectified is if there's a war to establish this. So I want you guys to hear all this. Never apologize for our founding documents. They were a starting point, just like your mom and dad bought a little tiny home one day in South Central LA. They painted it and got some flowers, and they sold it for a few dollars more than what they bought it, and they kept moving on until you moved to wherever you moved. You got that? That's how things start. And this is very, very important. But our founding fathers had vision. And then just one, I want to file this protest. I do not believe that the Bible, nor the Bible is alive because it's spiritual, but I don't believe that the Bible is, the Constitution is a living document. That's what Democrats call the Constitution. You want to know why they call it the living document or a living document? Yes, because they said we can change it based upon the times that we're living in, which means, and it's going to happen shortly after January, where there's no longer any need for you to own a gun, and there'll be a mandatory buyback gun. You will be surrendering your gun. Why? Because it's already been said. Why? Because the Constitution, Second Amendment, it applied then, it doesn't apply now, so you have to surrender your gun. Why do they say that? Because they say it's a living document. It's not firm. It's pliable. I talked a long time. We're going to have to wrap this up. One more question. Sorry, I took too long on that.
No, that was perfect.
I'm so sorry.
Are you kidding me? Thank you. That's awesome.
Hi, Jenny. This is
Hi.
just a quick question about your views on homeschooling and how it would play a role in restoring history back in our next generation.
I love homeschoolers. I love homeschoolers. In fact, it is my honor and privilege to speak at homeschoolers groups all the time. That's who I'm speaking to Monday. But I have the honor to be on faculty at FPEA, which is the Florida Homeschoolers Convention in Orlando every Memorial Day weekend. And they're the biggest one in the country, and actually I think the world, the biggest convention. And so it's been an honor to be on faculty there and give my workshops and talk to kids. But Suzanne Nunn, who's my very dear friend who is the head of FPEA, she told me that during COVID, they doubled their numbers in Florida going to homeschoolers. And, and I'm like, you guys, look how far homeschooling has come from bringing this, downtrodden, looked down upon thing. Hello, all the founding fathers were homeschooled, okay? It worked for our founding fathers, right? And it's like, you guys are on the front lines because I admire homeschooling parents. I mean, I'm telling you, oh my word, to radically change your life and to make the sacrifices to do what you do, to make sure and ensure your children are given a wholesome, solid, accurate, true education. There is nothing more important than the education of our children. Nothing. Because it impacts everything. And so I'm a big fan, and I love you guys. So, so I've got homeschooling classes. I mean, I'm giving you classes online. So listen, y'all are one of the best armies out there. So keep fighting for your children.
You guys, I want to encourage, Jenny, you have books in the foyer, right?
Yes.
A lot of books. Her books are out there in the foyer. Buy them so she doesn't have to carry them home. They're a good investment. Look at it that way, seriously. Great stuff. That's why when we started reading Jenny, we just had to bring her out, and we had to make her books available. And so, if you can make it tomorrow to Riley's farm, is that an open thing or is that a closed thing?
We've got about 20 spaces left.
Oh, my.
And I'm doing Give Me Liberty or Give Me Another plot line where Patrick Henry came up with Liberty or Death. And it started in ancient Rome. So it starts at 10:30. It's a workshop, and then Patrick Henry's going to be there. We've got about 20 spaces left. In front of my website, there's a flyer, and you can register tonight. First 20 to get there, sign up. I'll see you in the morning. That's awesome.
And then, so we're going to pray right now, but before you do, before we close and before I pray, you guys, I just want to remind you, that was very generous of you to point out Davey Lou being here with us tonight. You guys, this guy's a big deal. I don't know if you know how big of a deal he is, but Disney made a lot of money off this guy. He did some of your most wonderful things that you've seen in Disney cartoon. I don't know if it's cartoon. What do they call it?
Animation.
Animation. Mm-hmm. It's this man here. And when he left, it was news all on the page. Why did he leave Disney? But I'm telling you, this guy loves the Lord, and you ought to get his autograph before he goes home.
Hey, Davey, come hang out at my table. Y'all can get an autograph. Conditionally, if you get a book, then you can get Davey's autograph. Okay?
Woo!
Marketing.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No, come get his autograph.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you. Okay. Yeah. Father God, we just thank you for Jenny. And Lord, we pray that you'd bless her busy schedule. We thank you, Lord, that she has spent time to be with us tonight. And I pray, Lord God, that though we are few in number, we might be mighty indeed. And it is awesome to realize, as she pointed out, the 1/3. Lord, you have never been a God of numbers, only when the numbers are too big. You told Gideon to send a lot of guys home until there was only 300. You used a David to slay a Goliath. That's no story, that's a fact. And Lord, you took 12 men and you caught them on fire with your gospel truth, and change the world. And so, Father, there's more than 12 people here tonight. We pray that they would leave this place on fire to go do what you've called them to do. And we thank you, Lord God, for all of the amazing things. And I agree with Jenny. I don't know how it's going to work out, but somehow in heaven, the passions that we have here on earth will be fully realized in your kingdom. How that's going to be, all I can think of is better. We praise you, Lord, in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. God bless you. Get to the foyer.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness, it was so